Golden State Media Concepts Sci-Fi Podcast. Together we dive into the world of sci-fi and science fiction. From episodes of Star Trek, Star Wars, to The Walking Dead, Resident Evil, all the hot new science fiction movies from the back doors of Marvel or DC. The Golden State Media Concepts Sci-Fi Podcast. You'll never look at science fiction the same way again.
Welcome, everyone, to the Golden State Media Concepts Science Fiction Podcast. I'm your favorite host, Pauline.
And I'm your other favorite host, Shay.
And I guess it depends on what you like to listen to. Depends on who's your favorite. But
why can't we both be their favorite?
No, there can only be one.
Oh, man.
There can only.
Hey, maybe sometime we'll talk about Highlander.
Okay. And so today's episode, we are going to be discussing a few things. First, we're going to talk about Pirates of Caribbean and or Caribbean, I don't know, whatever.
It's the Caribbean, I think.
Yeah, people. We're talking about pirates and Jack Sparrow and a new one to be released coming up soon in 2017, as well as mine and Shay's review of Miss Peregrine's Home for Peculiar Children, which I really think you guys should stick around for that one, whether you've read the book, seen the movie, or neither. We have some good things to talk about when it comes to that.
We've got a lot to talk about when it comes to that movie. I was well, you'll see.
Yes.
There's a lot to talk about.
And then we also want to discuss, because we always like to talk about a subgenre of science fiction, and today we're going to be discussing diesel punk. And
well, we picked Miss Peregrine's Home for Peculiar Penguins because we thought that, this looks like a diesel punk movie, and how wrong we were.
It looked.
I guess it technically qualifies as a diesel punk movie, technically, only by technicality. Like,
if you really break it down.
Only because part of it takes place with Nazis, and they're like barely in it. So,
I'm pretty.
It's not really diesel.
We're going to have to wait to get into that one, because if we start with that one, then it's just going to set the tone for the entire show.
For the whole show.
And it's just not going to be.
So it looks like there's going to be yet again another Pirates of the Caribbean movie, making this number 5?
I think number 5.
I believe, what's this one called? This one's called
Dead Men, Tell No Tales. Yes.
And so if you're not familiar with the series, then you haven't been paying attention the last 20 years. There's been 4 of these. I honestly liked the Pirates of the Caribbean, but it looks like this is another Jack Sparrow spin-off story. We're not going to get William. We're not going to get what's her name? I forget her name.
Maybe Catherine.
Something like that. Yeah, we're not going to get
Sounds like it might
the
be
other
Catherine.
major characters that are in the series. It's just another Jack Sparrow spin-off, apparently. I don't know how you guys felt about the last one with the mermaid and all of that stuff.
I didn't see that one. I kind of stopped after the first.
It had Penelope Cruz. The reason I watched it was because it had Penelope Cruz, to be perfectly honest.
Keira Knightley is the other girl.
Knightley, yes.
There we go.
Yeah.
There we go. That's
the only
her.
man in those movies, as Ask a Ninja says.
Oh, man. Well, okay, so this is going to be the 5th installment. You may have heard it called Pirates of Caribbean, The Revenge of Salazar, or Salazar's Revenge. Just depends on where.
Yeah, it depends on where you're living. You know how, it's really interesting how in different places, different movies get different names because
depending on the
culture.
Culture and what's, allowed to be said. And
like, the movie I Spit on Your Grave was originally called Day of the Woman. And in every other country, it's called Day of the Woman, except in America, because that would not do well in America. So they called it I Spit on Your Grave, a.k.a. Day of the Woman.
Right.
So I don't know why we're getting a different name rather than Revenge of Salazar or whatever. Why we're getting Dead Men Tell No Tales? Maybe.
I mean, Revenge of Salazar or Salazar's Revenge sounds cool too.
It sounds a little cooler. Now, if you haven't seen the trailer, I would suggest check it out. So it shows these ghosty pirates coming through this ship, killing some people, and they stop by the guy, and he's like, "Have you seen Jack Sparrow?" He's got the wanted poster on the note, and he's like, "I only know of him by name." It's like this little boy,
right?
Not a little boy, but he's like 17.
Yeah.
And he's like, "Well, could you tell him then I'm coming for him.
Yeah, and then he just
Please?
says, "Please." I know. So of course Jack Sparrow is going to be the central.
Yeah, I feel like the Jack Sparrow thing, I'm not going to lie, is getting a little old.
They need to add something else with it.
I feel like ever since Johnny Depp has played Jack Sparrow, he's been stuck in that same cast type. Like, he's always just playing Jack Sparrow, even if he's not Jack Sparrow in a movie now. Like,
yeah.
I feel like that's what everybody wants from him. And yeah, it was cool when it was fresh, but I'm getting kind of tired of it, you know?
No, yeah, I can see that. And that's probably honestly why I'm kind of over this series since the third one, because I was getting kind of like bored with it. I love the first one.
I think the third one ended things on a really good note. Like, I wasn't too sure how I felt about the second one when I first saw it. I don't know. I need to watch it again. I haven't seen it since.
Yeah, I want to rewatch them.
But when I remember getting a sense of closure when I watched the
third one.
I was like, I was like, I know that they could open this up for more in the future because he's got to spend a couple years being Davy Jones, right?
Yes.
William does. And yeah, spoiler alert, by the way. But
that's like an old movie.
Yeah, I mean, it's
the
been
fourth
out
one
for
came
a
out
while.
in like 2011 or something. So
it's been out for a minute. If you haven't seen it, then you've been actively trying not to. I think at this point. So I think it wrapped things up in a nice, easy closure. We're good, and you know. I remember I thought the first one wrapped itself up pretty good, and I remember thinking to myself, like, oh, like, I'm good with the end of this.
Right.
But then the second one leaves you that big cliffhanger, and this was before big cliffhangers at the end of movies was like a really popular trope. So I remember being really mad at the end of the second movie. I remember just being like, they're going to leave me with a cliffhanger like that? Like,
right.
Why did I even bother to watch this?
Yeah.
But that was, again, before that became a trope, and now I just I just expect a cliffhanger from every movie.
Yes, I agree.
Even if it's bad. Like, there are cliffhangers at the end of movies that'll never get sequels. Like,
and I'm like,
Beautiful Creatures.
Yeah.
It's like the worst movie I've ever seen in theaters. And it's so bad. But they were expecting to get a couple more sequels out of that. What else did that? Avatar: The Last Airbender, that garbagey film. That film... Like, they were
Shay
expecting to get
film.
like everybody hates that film. It's worse than The Room.
I have seen The Room, actually.
Really, with Tommy Wiseau?
Yeah.
You're tearing me apart, Lisa.
So it's scheduled to come out in 2017. So if you haven't seen the first four, you have time. I'll admit, I did buy the box set that had 1, 2, and 3.
Yeah,
when that was like a thing in the day.
I own the fourth one for some reason.
I
think my grandma like gave it to me for Christmas
gift?
or something. And I was like, okay.
I watched it multiple times in college. I did. I enjoyed it. Pirates of the Caribbean was a good one. I like the first one.
I like the style of it. I think that's what I really like more than anything.
And it's kind of and for me, because you know, I know you guys know that I don't watch scary movies like that. So it's just enough like thrill for me.
You think Pirates of the Caribbean is a scary movie?
Sometimes some of that stuff is creepy. Yes, when they're like skeleton zombie pirate things. Yes, some of the stuff is kind of scary.
So apparently, during pre-production, so On Stranger Tides was the fourth one. That was the name of the fourth one, and so I guess they had written the script for this like before Stranger Tides was even released,
right?
And now it's been rewritten a couple times. So I think it's interesting that it has been delayed. Now, that means one of two things, and I've said this before, and I'll say it again. When movies are delayed, it either means that they want it to be good, or they just don't care. So hopefully this will be something where they're actually trying to give us something decent. I don't know how many people are going to want to see this. Would you guys want to see this? Like,
honestly, I don't know if I'm going to go to the movies. It's supposed to be May 26, 2017, supposedly.
Well, May is a good time for movies.
But I don't know if I'm going to... Okay, this is. I already know what's going to happen. This is the only way I'm going to see it in movies. My mom's going to want to go see it, and my brothers are going to be in town from college. So she's going to be like, let's all go. We love pirates. And that's how I'll see it in the theaters. Or if that doesn't happen, if they're not home in time while this is in theaters, we're not going to see it. And then my mom's going to be like, I always wanted to see this in theaters, but we'll just watch it at home. And I'm like, that's fine. And then I'm probably going to fall asleep halfway through. It happens, I'm telling you.
I'll probably see it somewhere, like at a party or, you know, like
playing in the background?
Yeah, or like even like, you know, I may go see it depending on what happens.
It's really difficult, I think, when the movies make so many installments and they don't really add enough element. Because it's almost like you can kind of expect what's going to happen. So I think that's why sometimes people get bored, especially when you're fourth,
It
fifth.
seems like every single one of these movies is we're looking for Jack Sparrow because
It's
he
kind
did
of like
something to us.
You know, and then he's getting out of little situations and things like that.
Now I know for some reason, and this is just from like reading some background notes about the script, and like just little things here and there. I guess they're looking for Poseidon's trident, which sounds pretty lame to me.
Yeah.
Yeah, like I'm tired of this.
I don't see how that has
looking
anything to
for
do
an
with
object
Dead
and-
Men Tales then. Tell no tales.
Well, and the antagonist, Captain Salazar, is trying to get the trident so he can like kill all pirates or something. He's like a ghost
so you
pirate.
can just,
It might just be to kill himself. It might be because he wants revenge on Captain Jack. I don't know. They're always looking for something, and there's always somebody trying to get Captain Jack. So it's like the same thing.
So that's what I'm saying. I probably wouldn't be able to tell. Like if, like how you were saying, like if it's kind of playing in the background, I probably wouldn't be able to tell which one it was. I'd be like, oh, Jack's running away.
Yep.
Like, you know, and that happens.
No.
Yeah, you
He's
know,
drinking again.
So, you know, or getting stuck somewhere and is weaseling his way out. And it's kind of like, you know, I'll probably be like, honestly, if the fourth one was playing at somebody's house and I started like, I jumped into it, I'd be like, oh, I forgot this part. And then I wouldn't even realize it was a whole other movie. I'd probably be like, oh, I forgot this part in number 3. And somebody would have to tell me this is a whole different movie.
That's funny.
Which I'm really sad because I loved the first 2. Like, I love number 1. So I'm kind of sad that it's fizzling out and now I'm kind of over it. Maybe because I'm older that I'm like over it. I don't know.
I don't know. I think those movies hold up pretty well, actually. Like, if you were to watch them now as opposed to then. Like,
true.
I think
I agree.
they hold up.
I agree, but I'm kind of
Definitely
like...
huge budgets.
Yeah.
They're like blowing up ships and stuff.
Yeah.
Anyway, we are about to go to break. When we get back from the break, we're going to talk to you guys about Miss Periwinkle's School for Particular People.
Or Miss Peregrine's Home for Peculiar Children, whichever you prefer.
That one.
We'll be right back. Periwinkle.
Are you looking for help for your fantasy football team? Check out the GSMC Fantasy Football Podcast. Get today's best advice on who to start, who to sit, even who you should draft. From sleeper picks to red hot lineups, they got it all covered for you. That's gsmcpodcast.com/fantasy-football-podcast. We'll cover traditional leagues, dynasty, PPR, even IDP leagues. When you need fantasy help, there's just one show to hit up. Don't forget to like them on Facebook and follow them on Twitter. Visit gsmcpodcast.com for more info.
And welcome back, ladies and gentlemen, to the Golden State Media Concepts Sci-Fi Podcast. Now, we're going to talk to you guys about Mrs. Pickle's Home for Penguin Children. What is this? What is the title of this film?
Okay, so it's Miss Peregrine's Home for Peculiar Children.
Now, before we get started, we get deep down into the dark and juicy of this film, when I went to go buy my ticket,
yes,
I just went up there and I'm like, I told my girlfriend, I can't pronounce this name, Mrs. Penguin's Home for
Peregrine.
Pennies.
Peregrine.
I don't know. I couldn't. It's like a tongue twister, right? Like it's kind of hard.
Kind of, sort of.
So like I'm like, you're gonna have to tell them what we're gonna see. She's like, she hits me and is like, no, you have to tell them what we're gonna see. So I go up there and I'm like, I just want to see the one about the particular people. And the guy's like, yeah, Miss Peregrine's Home for the Peculiar Children, and I'm like,
Shay's literally reading this off the paper and he still can't pronounce it. I love it.
and he's like, yeah, it's a bit of a tongue twister if you ask me. And I could tell, I could see in his eyes that he was like, I'm sorry, brother.
Yeah,
Another one has fallen.
Yeah. Well, when I went to go see it, I was with my mom, and I was actually pretty excited to watch this because we had heard from people who have read the book. And they were raving about it and excited for it to come out as a movie. And my mom and I were like, you know, finally we can see what this is all about. And then we watched it.
So to be clear, and I am going to start this out before everyone starts throwing rocks and shooting at me.
Right.
We are talking about the movie here. We are not talking about the book. And a movie needs to stand on its own, okay? I don't care what the book says. I don't care what the book clears up. to be honest and to be completely judging a movie, I haven't read the book. I don't know anything about the book. I know that the book was written and I know people love it. That's all I know about the book. I know that there are some differences, and I know that, there are probably things that are explained in the book that aren't explained in the movie.
Right.
And I don't care. And this is why.
The movie is, go.
And I've been hammering this home since we started doing this show. And if I could achieve one thing in my life, it would be to explain to people that a book needs to stand alone.
Right.
Or a movie needs to stand alone. The book should not have to back up anything the movie does. I should not have to read the book to enjoy the movie. That being said, I have read books and watched movies that, I'm not just always watching movies of things.
Yeah.
So a movie needs to stand on its own. A movie is not good just based on the content of the book alone. That being said, this is a Tim Burton film.
Which I was also excited about, too, because I like his films.
I didn't realize it was I didn't realize this was a Tim Burton film until my buddy was like, "Yeah, it's Tim Burton." I'm like, "Oh." He hasn't really put his name all over it. Like, he put his name in the opening, but I haven't, besides people telling me it's a Tim Burton film,
right.
Nobody's going around like, this is a Tim Burton film. Right. Nobody's going around like Tim Burton presents. I haven't heard a lot about it. I haven't seen too many previews. True. I haven't heard so many trailers, and there is a reason for this, ladies and gentlemen. Also, Samuel L. Jackson is in this film, and you would think, oh man, Samuel L. Jackson in a Tim Burton film, you would think oh man, that's big. Everybody loves Samuel L. Jackson. Everybody loves Tim Burton. You'd think that this would be all over the place. Well, there's a reason why it is not. Because this is the worst Tim Burton movie I have ever seen, and in this movie, I never thought I could see Samuel L. Jackson act poorly. You could obviously tell Samuel L. Jackson did not care about this movie. He was not a threatening villain. He's making dumb faces throughout the whole thing.
Yes!
He's not even he doesn't say much. He just throws crack puns and jokes. They don't even introduce the villain until 75% of the way through the movie.
And this is actually one time where I'm 100% agreeing with Shay. We always have different takes on movies, and I'm always like, but it was cute, or it was innocent fun.
So I'm going to break this down for you a little bit. I'm going to try really hard not to give any spoilers here, but the movie starts and it's about the son and his grandpa, and the grandpa's telling him stories about being an adventurer and an explorer and all these things. And I'm like, yeah, that's cool. And then the son finds out that maybe the stories aren't so true because kids in class are telling him that it's not true. And his dad's like, yeah, dude, your grandpa's full of it.
Yeah, and there's something
the grandpa's
wrong. He's off.
upset that, he says that, but that's kind of a good story. And so Miss Peregrine's group is it's supposed to be in the 1940s when her grandpa was all into that, and so he's Jewish and there's Nazis, and so the dad's well, it's just a metaphor for him running away from the Nazis,
right? Which I was like, okay, this kind of makes sense.
So then he finds his grandpa, and his grandpa's eyes are gone, and the grandpa's just the bird will tell you.
Yeah.
And then he sees this monster-y thing, and then he goes to therapy, and the therapist is like, well, maybe you should go to Wales to that place and see it, so that way you'll get some closure. Yeah. So he goes with his dad.
The home for peculiar children. The therapist says you should go to the home where your grandfather grew up for some closure.
So
because his grandpa's dead. We could say that.
I have to say that the best thing about the movie is the dad. No, don't get me wrong. I like the first part of the movie. The second part of the movie is them introducing all of the characters and all the kids and everything, and that took forever. They didn't explain anything. They didn't do anything. It was just hey, look at all these kids. Look at all the things.
There's
that they
a lot
have.
of gaps, yeah.
And there was a lot of nothing that happened in the middle, and it got kind of boring, especially because we don't have a conflict. There was no conflict,
and then
until 75% of the way through the movie. Now,
no conflict, no nothing. It's actually pretty peaceful.
The best thing about the movie is the dad, because it's the guy who plays the guy from the IT crowd, Chris O'Dowd, who is Roy in the IT crowd. And I remember just seeing him and thinking to myself, of all of the little skits in the IT crowd that made me laugh. So that I just kept thinking of Roy the entire time I'm watching him on screen. And he actually did a pretty good job playing a dad who is a little bit depressed, and he's a writer, and he's doesn't really
He's a photographer.
He's a photographer?
Yeah.
No, well, he's making a book about birds.
Oh. He's weird.
Anyway.
He's a photojournalist.
So the monsters in this movie look like Slender Man. It's almost a complete rip-off of Slender Man.
That's what I was watching. When I was watching, I was like, this is Slender Man? Slender Man? Yeah. I was like, what is... I don't know.
So, like, the thing that I really hate about this movie and the thing that really ruined it for me, despite a scene where invisible Slendermen are fighting an army of skeletons to generic pop. It is the most generic soundtrack I could possibly imagine. And, like, me and my girlfriend look over at each other and we're like, what? This is dumb.
Well, that was Shay hated that part. And the funny thing is, I saw the movie before Shay did, and so I was sitting throughout the movie just knowing. And there are certain scenes and parts of the movie, and I was like, "Oh, Shay is gonna hate this," because even I was like, "Are they kidding me?
It's dumb,
you know?" And I usually am like, "Oh, this is like fun, like, you know, it's innocent fun type thing."
Well, I can suspend the disbelief all day long, but there are some things that I can't suspend.
And then my part that really just, when I was just like done with the movie, was towards the end, because I was like, okay, I want to see how this ends type thing, you know, of course.
Oh my God, so anticlimactic.
Yes! The way that they defeat the villain.
Well, the villain's pathetic.
First off, yes.
The villains are pathetic. They're not even scary. There's nothing about these. Any of these kids, like, could have just taken them down at any moment. Like, they are pathetic.
And so when they finally defeat the villain, who, I don't know if I can say this, but kind of defeats himself in a way, I was just like, you're kidding me.
Yeah.
You're kidding me. And I was like, this is how they win. And I remember I looked at my mom and I was just like, I'm over this movie. And then there's like, I think 15 minutes more of the movie and I could have done without it. But I was just like, this is so annoying. And I was like, so this is how it ends. And then the twins kind of bugged me because there's two little twin kids.
If you see the movie, you'll understand why the twins bugged her.
The twins really bugged me as to why they didn't use their power earlier. And I think it kind of bothered me because I didn't even know what their powers were throughout the entire movie.
Yeah, and then once you see it, it's like, are you kidding me?
Yeah, and then I was like, I remember I looked at my mom. I was like, this is so dumb. I was like, this could have been ended a long time. And of course, there are other movies where it's like, this could have ended if somebody would have made a different choice. But that was too much for me. Like, I was like, they only now decided to use their power, and everybody knew that they had this power that could have been used way earlier because they're all like, they live together and they all know each other very well. So I'm just like, that kind of bothered me. But I mean, I think if you're like a young child and you can't piece all that together, it's kind of fun and it's kind of scary. There were some parts that kind of scared even me. I'm not even kidding. Like when Victor popped up out the bed, I was like, ooh. But then
that was cheap horror.
And I knew Shay would make fun of me for that. And I know if you have seen this movie or are planning on seeing that movie, when you see that part, you guys are going to laugh at me because you're going to be like, really, Pauline, that scared you? It did. It made me jump. Thought it was kind of creepy. You know, he's dead but not-ish.
So I think the biggest sin that this movie has, despite the fact that the whole middle of the movie is intensely boring with nothing going on, is how they dealt with time travel.
Yeah, Shay is stuck on the time travel. And which, again, goes back to how you were saying that I'm sure a lot of people that have read the book can probably explain time travel in this, like the loops and everything.
The movie needs to explain
better, but because
if you were going to incorporate time travel in your movie, so there were a couple different theories about time travel, and I believe Drew has covered it in the past. There's usually the alternate timelines things, time paradox things. There's the whole everything has already been set out and you can't change anything. Like it's already been, it was already going to happen anyway.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Somehow, some way, it's still going to happen.
This movie works in like weird loops, and they don't make sense. Like literally, if you were to think about the way the time travel works, now, granted, the way that I perceive how the time travel works is different than how Pauline perceives how the time travel works, which is different than how my girlfriend perceives how the time travel works. Nobody knows how this works. Everybody just walks out of the movie completely confused about the time travel.
Well, and then the thing that the kicker for me was that one of our our boss, she said she's read the book, and when she was listening to Shay and I argue before we started this show, she was like, well, you guys are both kind of right and both kind of wrong. And we were like, what does that mean? How are we both kind of right and both kind of wrong? And she's like, well,
there's this part of the movie that ruins the whole thing. And I'm not ruining, like, I'm not spoiling anything. Like,
oh, right.
So there's a time loop thing going on in the movie, and every day one of the Slenderman things comes up, and then Mrs. Perschnuffen goes
Peregrine.
and shoots it in the head at exactly the right time. Well, there's a little kid that's dead. Why isn't this thing dead at the start of the day? Because it's technically a peculiar too. Like,
okay, but I think what it is that you don't reset So if the event already happened,
so if
he
you
already
don't reset,
dies,
that thing should be dead.
No, but everything else resets. All the other actions, but whatever happens to you is permanent, though.
Yeah, but then that would have been permanent for that thing, because
Like
that
permanently
thing is
dead?
technically one of them.
No. See, now I'm stumped.
So the fact that this thing
Oh,
exists,
so you're saying that when she reverses the time, he should be undead.
he should be dead. Not the kid, the monster.
Right. Because
the
if
monster
the kid,
is
if the
technically
kid
a kid.
is still dead, then why isn't the monster still dead?
Exactly.
Because if the monster is able to reset and come back alive and
Why
do the
can't the
same,
other
why doesn't the
people?
kid reset as well?
And not just that.
Oh,
so
Victor,
there's
I think
that.
is the kid's name.
Yeah, there's not just that too. Like the fact that that thing even exists in the first place and does this. And from what I understand, I talked to Sarah, our boss, and she told me that that scene is not even in the book. The reason they incorporated that scene is to show that Miss Peregrine is tough.
It's like, yeah. It's just
So-
kind of just to show, yeah. It's just like a character.
But
builder
what it
type
does
thing.
is it ruins their time travel.
Okay,
If
now
you
that
really
when-
think
now
about it,
when
not
I'm
only does
thinking
it
about
ruin
that
their time
way-
travel, it also means that Miss Peregrine is reckless. Because if you're going to set a loop on a day when this monster could come and destroy everybody,
Well, that's what they say. It's not the most ideal day.
well, then you find a different day.
But she can't find different day because there's no other day to pick because she was
But see,
forced
and
to
this
pick
is
that day.
this is how like this is where the arguments start because the time travel doesn't make sense.
True, because I
It's not
think
explained.
that you can't go back in time unless there's a loop
can at
on
least-
that day.
you can at least go back 24 hours.
But there's not a loop every single day.
The girl has control of when she can set the loops.
But since she set the loop on the 3rd, she can't go back to the 2nd.
No,
she can just go
but
to the
she could-
start of the 3rd.
Right. Well, she could go like if she went on the 4th, she could keep it on the 4th all day if she wanted to.
But then if she would have did it on the 4th, then that would have been after the bombs dropped.
and then
it would've
yeah,
been
well they could
Tara
find a
and
different
Cornwall.
place, and then they wouldn't be she wouldn't have to kill that monster every day.
But I don't think they had enough time to escape before
See,
the end of the
it's
3rd
so
to get anywhere
convoluted.
because it's war. So she couldn't just take the kids away during war.
Sure, she could.
Where's she gonna go?
They went places on. Okay, so another thing that's really dumb. We're not going to sit here and fight about this all day because
I just want to
Again,
know the true.
it really doesn't make
answer,
sense.
Like, what, yeah, I need to understand.
And then
the
why
raw-
can't
the
she? If
logic.
she can go back a day. Why can't she go back another once she starts the next day?
Because
Like,
she's not. She can't. She doesn't have like no, wait. Hold on. I have like 50 things
they
to say
really
that
don't
can't come out.
explain the time travel
But I think
aspect
she
of
can't
the
go
movie.
back. You can't travel back in time unless there is a loop, unless there's a portal.
No, but like that,
Like a loop
they
or whatever.
create the loops. Like she explains that she's the one that creates
Yeah,
it.
but once the day is already over, and if you don't set the loop, like if a next day begins, you can't go back in time.
They
the
never-
Langoliers
they never-
eat it. The Langoliers eat it.
Then they never said that.
But that's what I think. I know it's one of
Yeah,
those,
no, it's one of those things where they
gaps.
never like actually explain how it works. Anyway, we're gonna move past this. Another thing that was really dumb about the movie is there is a boat underwater.
Shay is so hurt about this.
This
boat.
was so stupid. I was like throwing my hands up in the theater, like I'm sitting there with my girlfriend. I tap her on the shoulder. I'm like pointing at the
man.
screen, like, what is this? So there is a boat rusted,
For like
sunken.
years.
And we're talking, this is like
Centuries.
it's coal. It runs on coal. Somehow, using her breath powers, she gets the boat to rise.
Oh, because she's an airbender kind of thing.
But how, like, if the boat
not
already
bender,
sank,
but-
then how did they, like, patch up the hole? How were they able to get these furnaces working again now that it's all rusted? Can her air get rid of rust? The answer is no. Is the boat flying? Can she make the boat fly?
That is what I thought was going to happen. I thought it was going to be some Pirates of the Caribbean type mess.
Nope.
And that it was going to float in the
It's
air.
just floating.
And that's the thing too, is that nobody, because technically this is happening in the present, and I was like, is nobody seeing this happen like around? Like, is nobody on the water at all? Nobody's gonna notice an ancient ship just.
But again, we're coming up short here. We're gonna have to take a break pretty soon because we could talk about how much we hate this movie all day long.
Honestly, I was really disappointed. I thought it was going to be, but it was fun. But then my brain was like analyzing everything.
Exactly, it doesn't make sense.
Because some stuff, yeah.
And then, like, Samuel L. Jackson is just garbage in this movie.
And then his like villain friends
When
were like
yeah,
wimpy.
totally.
They were just. I
Here are
don't
these
think that.
big
I
bad
honestly
guys,
don't think that they were like really villain friends. They kind of just got stuck in his evil plan, and then they had to deal with it.
I don't know,
because these things
are supposed to be ferocious murderers, and they didn't. There was no stakes. But my big thing is like there was a point in the movie where Samuel L. Jackson's giving this big giant monologue. And I was just so disappointed by his acting in this movie that I almost got up and walked out. If it hadn't been for the fact that I went and saw this with my girlfriend, if I was by myself, I would have just left. I did not need to see the ending of this movie. The ending of the movie doesn't make sense to me anyway. Like, there's some weird time travel stuff that
he goes back and finds her.
Yeah, but it doesn't really
Okay, before we cut to a break, though. Okay, wait. Or can I talk about this after the break? I have to talk about the love interest. I have to.
Oh, please.
I have to get that off my chest.
Let's do it.
Okay.
This is going to be an extra long episode, guys. I apologize.
This is just going to run a little overtime, but this is the one thing that kind of got me in the very beginning of the movie, and I was like, they better not allow this. So, his grandpa grew up in the peculiar home, right? He has a love interest. Totally fine. It happens. Grandpa goes, he comes into the present world, so then he ages, he becomes a grandfather, starts his own family, becomes a father, has his grandson. His grandson is the one who goes back and I guess saves them in a way, like whatever. So the grandson is now the new love interest of grandpa's old girl, which I think is wrong. And like I saw it coming, and because I saw the way she kept looking at him, and I was like, oh, they better not. Like, they could not allow this to happen. Like, I know that the grandson is supposed to look identical to how the grandfather looked when he was young and things like that, but I'm just like, no, girlfriend, like, it's a whole nother person. And then at the end, the grandfather will shoot, I think that's a spoiler, but I don't care.
No, don't.
It's just wrong what happens with this love interest. It's just wrong. It's very not correct. It's just, they did not need that to happen. He could have fell in love with anybody else. She could have just said to herself, oh, you remind me of him. But like, that could have been her grandson, technically, if they would have stuck together and had kids. It would have been her no, it's just not right. It's just not right. I know that they're not technically related, but the fact, if my grandfather was in love, if my grandmother was in love with a man and then that man finds me, I'm not going to fall in love with that man. That's just wrong. That's just no. And you should feel ashamed for falling in love with somebody's grandchild when you loved them. I like how like your biggest flaw in the movie is like literally a morality thing. But like I saw that happening in the beginning of the movie, and I was like, no, because that also happens in another. Like that happens sometimes in movies, and I'm like, no, that's not okay. That also happens in that's wrong. Okay, so my piece is, okay, because there's another movie, it's called Age of Adeline, and I was very excited to see that movie as well, because I was like, oh, it's going to be kind of interesting. So basically the premise of the movie is that she gets into a car accident, gets, I think, struck by lightning, I believe it is, and so it changes her body to where she never ages. So this happens, and she's like 100 years old or something, like something wild, but then because she can never age, when she falls in love or gets a love interest, she ends up leaving them because she knows that they're going to age and die, but she's not. And it's like weird. Like she has to keep changing her identity and her jobs because the people around her start aging and then like she doesn't, right? So she outlives everyone. And then so at one point she likes this guy and she falls for this guy a little bit. She goes home to meet his parents, and then she sees the dad, and she realizes the dad is one of her love interests in a past, like, fake life that she's had, a past alias. And the dad is like, oh my God, you remind me of somebody that I once knew. And she's like, oh, that's my mother. I look just like her. Blah, blah, blah. Gives him a fake lie when she knows it's the same man. And instead of keeping her love interest being the father, she just diverts it to the son, and then they end up getting married and all that because of course like it reverses itself. Of course that always happens at the end of all these kind of movies. And I was sitting there thinking to myself, girl, you nasty, because then I was like that's just wrong, because I was thinking as I was watching this movie, you were with the dad at one point, and then I thought to myself, this is just wrong. Like, because I'm like, that could have been your son, and it's not, because she doesn't have a son.
But that's not like a flaw with a movie though. Like,
it's just a flaw in storytelling. That's just why is this like so interesting to people? Like, isn't that wrong? Like, you can't love somebody's dad and then because you don't age. You're just gonna pick the son. No, that's just wrong.
Pauline
and how can you?
P, ladies and gentlemen,
And so
hater of love and romance.
No, I'm not. I just think that you should pick somebody and stick with them. You can't just jump around family member to family member.
So
and
to
that's
wrap up,
kind of what happens in Peregrines. And I was just like, no, you're like an 85-year-old teenager, which Sarah did say, because this lady, she doesn't age. And Peregrine, the airbender lady, the one that control air, the floater, she is technically hecka old, like 87, like
something like that.
And she falling in love with a teenage boy.
Now we are gonna wrap up Mrs. Pennywise's home for the criminally clown people.
No!
Pennywise was like the clown in It. So I just have to say, like, this is Tim Burton, guys. Mm-hmm. This is the guy that gave us Big Fish, Pee-wee's Big Adventure. This is the guy
Coraline.
who gave us... I think he was a producer. I don't think he directed that.
Oh, well, I like that one. That was a scary one for me, too.
Shay
always like, no.
I liked the book Coraline. The movie wasn't bad. I mean, it's like Edward Scissorhands, Big Fish, Batman. Like, I mean, this is Tim Burton, guys, and this is garbage.
Well, maybe he was just trying to make it more family friendly.
No, I think he's getting a paycheck, and I think Samuel L. Jackson's getting a paycheck.
No, definitely Samuel looks like it's just paycheck.
This is
this one, and they kind of just throw. I think that's why he's kind of like a minor major character.
I can't understand. So like the ratings on this thing, it's like what 64% on Rotten Tomatoes, 3 out of 5 on Common Sense Media, and like 7 out of 10. What's wrong with you people? Why do you like
7 out
this
of
stuff?
10?
Yeah, IMDb is a little bit like...
I'm kind of surprised in myself, too, because I really thought I was going to enjoy this, and even I didn't like it.
Yeah.
Now you know, because I like everything, basically.
So please, if you watch this movie, I'm sorry. I'm sorry that you will be subjecting yourself to this nonsense. When we come back, we're going to talk to you guys about Diesel Punk, and I don't know, hopefully we'll be in a better mood.
We'll be right back.
Tired of searching the vast jungle of podcasts? Now listen close and hear this out. There's a podcast network that covers just about everything that you've been searching. The Golden State Media Concepts Podcast Network is here. Nothing less than a podcast bliss with endless hours of podcast coverage. From news, sports, music, fashion, cooking, entertainment, fantasy, football, and so much more. So stop lurking around and go straight out to the Golden State Media Concepts Podcast Network. Guaranteed to fill that podcast itch, whatever it may be.
Welcome back, ladies and gentlemen, to the Golden State Media Concepts Science Fiction Podcast. Thank you for sticking around. I mean, we've kind of gone a little bit longer than we normally do. We just really did not like that movie.
Which I'm proud of us. We're such a good team right now.
Well, it's funny because like when we first started the show, Pauline and I didn't hardly agree on anything, and now we're coming to the point where we're like. We typically are now agreeing on films.
And it was funny because as I was watching that movie, I was sitting there thinking, I was like, ooh, Shay's going to hate this part. And I was like, oh, I can't wait to talk to Shay about this. Like, because I was like, I know he's going to hate it just as much as me.
So I went into that film kind of hoping that it would be Diesel Punk so we could have kind of a nice segue, so to speak, into our topic for today. I really do not feel like that movie does in any way, shape, or form embody Diesel Punk, but whatever.
I think...
It's honestly more steampunk than it is even Diesel Punk. Now, Diesel Punk has a cousin called Steampunk,
right?
Which is funny because if you really think about it, Diesel Punk kind of came first. Like, steampunk wasn't really a film genre until the movie City of Lost Children, which features Ron Perlman. It's a French film. Diesel Punk has been around since like the 80s. And Diesel Punk is it sort of kind of came from cyberpunk a little bit. And it kind of takes place in the time period when diesel-based locomotion and technology was kind of a big thing in Western culture. So a lot of times, diesel punk focuses on World War II, post-World War II, or pre-World War II. Usually in the 1940s. Sometimes there's a bit more advanced technology. A couple really good examples of this would be, well, I guess you could even say Metropolis is a diesel punk movie. But Indiana Jones is a good example of a diesel punk movie. Sky Captain: The World of Tomorrow is a perfect example of a diesel punk movie. Fallout is diesel punk, and there's some diesel punk elements if you've ever played BioShock. This is a pretty cool genre in of itself. I really like it. It seems like so one of the guys that like is kind of behind it, they did an interview with him, Scott Westerfield. He says that the difference between diesel punk and steampunk is more of, and I don't know if I agree with him so much here, that steampunk is more of about kind of like the Industrial Revolution type thing. So it's more like optimism about the future, whereas diesel punk is like we're kind of all upset about nationalism, they're Nazis, and we're all kind of depressed after the war. I honestly think that it's the opposite. I feel like steampunk is a lot more depressing than diesel punk. Diesel punk is usually, at least from my experience, in my opinion, diesel punk is kind of more of a outlet that kind of, it's adventurous, it's fun. It's high-end adventure. We're beating the bad guys. We're doing stuff. You know, you could even, have you seen Up?
Yeah.
Up is a diesel punk movie, if you really think about it.
Okay.
Like I feel like that is a perfect example of a diesel punk movie. I really enjoy diesel punk. It's one of my favorite genres in the science fiction genre. I would love to see more of it, but unfortunately we don't get too much besides what we get in video games and you know, a couple movies here and there. So that's something that I really like, and I think we're about to wrap up the show. We've gone on a little bit longer than I would have liked to have. Is there anything you kind of want to say about diesel punk?
No, I was going to say that, well, you kind of mentioned it already. One of the reasons why we did want to see Peregrine was because we were hoping it would kind of fall into this genre, but, you know, that happens. It didn't really fall into anything. It just fell.
And like, if you really want to define steampunk too, steampunk is set more in the Victorian era. So like late 1800s to the early 1900s. Right. So I've seen a lot of diesel punk films that usually take place between World War I and II.
Yeah, I feel like that's kind of
like
common,
the 30s.
Yeah.
Anyway, that is all the time we have for the show. Thank you for sticking around with us. I hope you enjoyed it. We talked to you guys a little bit about Pirates of the Caribbean. We talked to you guys about Mrs. Pencil's School for Pointy Children. And we also talked to you guys about diesel punk. So thank you for listening. Where can they find us, Pauline? You can find us on our network website, GSMCpodcast.com, as well as on iTunes, Google Play, SoundCloud, and Stitcher. I'm still your favorite host, Pauline. And I'm Shay Northrop. And we'll talk to you guys next time. Stay saucy.
You've been listening to the Golden State Media Concepts Sci-Fi Podcast, part of the Golden State Media Concepts Podcast Network. You can find this show and others like it at www.gsmcpodcast.com. Download our podcast on iTunes, Stitcher, SoundCloud, and Google Play. Just type in GSMC to find all the shows from the Golden State Media Concepts Podcast Network, from movies to music, from sports to entertainment, and even weird news. You can also follow us on Twitter and on Facebook. Thank you, and we hope you have enjoyed today's program.